I had an interesting conversation, lunch conversation, just a couple of days with one of my parishioners, a very faithful servant-like individual who has been with our church for many, many years, has given significantly to the church financially and his own time and so on and so forth. And he approached me and kind of confronted me in a very respectful sort of way. I had lunch with him. And I've had this conversation with several of my parishioners as well, where sometimes they don't feel that I'm being, how should I say, that I'm representing the orthodox point of view well enough, vis-a-vis, for example, Trump. And whether, they feel that somehow I'm selling out a little bit. They didn't put it in those terms to the progressive sectors of my church. My church is very divided in a way over these issues of immigration and Trump and social justice and so on and so forth. So I find myself navigating this very, very delicate line. And I find that, when I told him, what do you think I'm saying, though? What have you heard me say from the pulpit? Because my viewpoint about Trump, for example, is kind of ambivalent. I see certain things that he represents that are good for this nation. And again, I know you guys may feel differently about this, but I do believe that he is accomplishing certain things. He has stemmed a flow that I believe was draining our nation in many ways. But I also see all the darkness in what he represents. But he doesn't, people don't see that. It's like you have to be for or against.
Well, I just want to ask you, do you distinguish the platform and the person representing the platform? Do they have to be equivalent, right? So we have Christ and we have Christianity, right? And how do you see Trump and the platform that he represents?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the values that he has espoused and what he himself has incarnated in his own life and practices are really abhorrent to Christianity. I think that his practices, for example, his business practices in the past, the way that he treated and that he dealt with his competitors in the political campaign, his language, his moral practices in the past, I think the lack of transparency in the things that he offered, his potential constituents, and what he had probably in his own mind that he would do afterwards. And this thing of the ends justify the means. Let me get in there and offer them whatever it requires for me to get in there, and then we'll deal with it later on. All of those things I, as a pastor, could not identify with. And I tell you this, I did not vote for Trump. Neither did I vote for Hillary Clinton. I chose one of those options that I don't recommend that everybody do. I voted for divine providence. I told my people, the post-election Sunday, because I just could not bring myself as a pastor who holds to a higher view, really, to find myself espousing these values that he represented. Right. And yet I felt that, he could. There were things that he could do that I believed provided a space for the church to move more freely and to be the church, even while we rejected some of the things that he represents. I'll stop here because I want to hear what you guys have to say about that.
I like what Emma said about Christology. In more simpler terms, who is Jesus? What is the gospel? Because it's almost become a no-win discussion for evangelicals, for Christ followers to talk about, did they vote for Hillary or did they vote for Trump? Trump won the election. He's the president. How do we deal with that now? But I think that we need to examine what is really the core of our message. What is the gospel? What is the good news? And so I think to say, what did Jesus teach? And go back further than that, the 10 Commandments. What did Moses bring to us by way of a moral order? The first 4 commandments talk about our relationship to God. When Jesus said, what is asked, what is the greatest commandment? Thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So there's an undivided love for God. And your neighbor is yourself. The last 6 commandments talk about how we live in society. So I think then to examine the prophets, but let's just look at the life of Jesus. The unambiguous teachings. And it wasn't about vote your pocketbook, vote self-interest. It was about how do we care for other people? How is there a generosity of spirit? And so I think as a professor and a pastor, as a minister who shepherds a great flock here in Boston, as a missionary, as a reconciler, we need to make sure that we're helping our people look, first of all, what does the gospel say? Then how do we develop our theology out of that? And is our political preferences consistent with our biblical convictions. I think that that's where we have really lost away, because a lot of our evangelicals do not read the Bible. We know that. We have a real problem with biblical illiteracy. We say we believe that it's authoritative, it's inerrant, but have you read it? have you read it in terms of the Bible speaking to the whole vision of creation? The Tower of Babel, we were separated. Languages, cultures, ethnicities. Pentecost, we all came back together. The eschatological vision of John, there I looked, and as far as I could see from every language, nation, tribe, and tongue, that's what we yearn for. But if we're not working for that in our immediate towns and communities, did we really have a biblical vision? Or, in my case, am I about white privilege, consciously or subconsciously? I kind of like it the way it is.
Well, I think that's inherent to the challenge of who Christ was, right? So, and I think we jump to what did he teach, and the relationship with God, which is all good stuff. It's great theology, but who was he, right? So how do you worship, adore, and honor somebody who was other, right, and not love the others in your own society, right? How do you love and honor somebody who spent time with the least of these, but not practice that in your own life? How do you love someone who understood the Jewish law so well that he never broke it, although he expanded the understanding of what you can do within it, and not do that for yourself? And so this notion of entrenchment in terms of the Jesus we know and the God we know, right, and the whole notion of evangelical, right, and the 81%, those of us, right, not including us, right, because it's convenient to say evangelicals with the broad sweep when you're talking about, certain things, but then when you talk about other things, then it becomes white evangelicals, right? So it's coded language in terms of who are the baseline of those who believe that the Bible is the authoritative word of God, who believe in the Trinity, who believe in the soul-saving grace of Jesus, and who believe that we're supposed to go ye therefore, make disciples, baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So this challenge of the us versus thems, and looking at Christ and realizing that Christ didn't do that, right? And so that gets back to a major, modus operandi in terms of what do we actually believe Christianity is, and are we operating under the same lens or same guise or same anointing or same, testament?
And I think that's where therein lies the rub, so to speak, because I think different sectors of Christianity have different understandings of Christ.
Yes.
And will probably hang on to one aspect of Christ in all his complexity, instead of trying to remain in the tense center of his personality, which is so contradictory at times.
Yes.
So that, for me, I guess my own understanding, not only of Christ, but of God and of Scripture as a whole, I tend to take a view of God and of Christ that is a little more sinister than many evangelicals might take. We've heard of that statement in, I think, the Lion and the Wardrobe, that well-known C.S. Lewis story.
The Witch, the Lion, and the Wardrobe.
The Witch, the Lion, and the Wardrobe, where I knew there was a witch somewhere, but I didn't want to.
I only know that because of my wife,
that I was
who's a reader.
But this idea they say about Aslan. Is he loving? I think it is something like that. Or is he safe? Says no. He's loving, but he's not safe.
Yeah.
And I believe that there's an aspect of Christ, of Jesus, that is sinister. That when we concentrate excessively on his inclusive, benign dimensions.
Sentimental almost.
And not necessarily. I think sometimes it can be just that kind aspect of Christ. And I hear many liberal and progressive Christians say, "Oh, just give me Christ." Well, for a moment let's focus on who that Christ is. I think of the Christ, for example, that's portrayed in Revelations at the end of time. This is a Christ that is so scary and so sinister that when John contemplates him, he just melts and just faints to the ground. It's a terrible Christ with a sword, for a tongue, and just shimmering like bronze, and awe-inspiring and almost fearful. I think of the Christ that tears the tables in the temple, and is irate at the the violation of the holiness of the temple. I think of the Christ that confronts Peter and says, get away from me, Satan, because you only have your mind set on one thing, which is the human dimension. And the one who calls the Pharisees hypocrites and whited sepulchres. That Christ. I think of the Paul, who in one breath almost says, love each other, prefer each other, be kind to each other. And then in another breath, he speaks of these dogs that are trying to mislead, the Galatians into, keeping the law and so on and so forth, and try to make Christ something less than what he is in his anger, and some of his language that I would not use it. It's the Apostle Paul, and we kind of pay deference to his seniority, but the fact is that we would be scandalized if any Christian, any minister would use that language from the pulpit.
That's right.
And so, I tend to see that Christ as well as the other Christ. The other Christ that says to the adulterous woman, I don't judge you. Just go and sin no more. The Christ who doesn't say to Zacchaeus, hey, you got to convert and do this and do that before he comes into his home and inhabits there, who converts Zacchaeus actually because of his kindness, his love, his acceptance. In other words, I live within that seemingly contradictory Christ, and that same God also who sometimes worked with Cyrus and Nebuchadnezzar, and who might somehow find something of value to trump in the advancement of his kingdom. So I'll stop there.